We're here today with Peter Zarris, the Chairman of the College of Organisational Psychology and co-convener of International Congress of Coaching Psychology. Thanks for your time today, Peter. We're here to discuss coaching. We hear a lot about coaching these days, but could you explain to us what exactly coaching is?
That's a very good question. There's been a lot of research about what coaching is, and there's obviously differing points of view. At a simple level, coaching is a one-to-one relationship designed for a specific purpose. Some research suggests coaching is really about setting goals within a relationship and the coach facilitating those goals. Others see coaching as being about the relationship, helping a person remove blockages or other issues to help them be successful. My own personal view is that coaching is about developing capabilities. It's a subset of learning and development, although I'm looking at it specifically from an organisational context. So I guess we have a number of definitions of it, but essentially it's about a one-to-one relationship that is specifically designed to improve a person's performance and their well-being in the workplace.
A lot of organisations invest heavily in selecting good people, training them and managing their performance. With all that, why would they need coaching?
That's a very good question again. I suppose there's three parts to that. Firstly, assessing people or investing in selection processes is really about aligning the person to the job and as best you can in an interview situation, determining whether that person's going to be successful. Training, well, the jury's out on the effectiveness of training for some of us. Training is really, in my opinion, about acquiring knowledge and about developing new skills, but there's certain capabilities, as I call them, such as influencing, resolving conflicts, collaborating with key stakeholders, thinking strategically, which also become part of the role. And as a result, whether the person fits into the role perfectly, whether you provide the person with the right training and development, that still may not be enough. Essentially, there's doing the job and there's doing the job in a complex organisation milieu. So what coaching does, coaching helps a person to be successful in complex systems where selection and training, where they may add value, they may not be sufficient in ensuring success.
And how can you tell if a coaching intervention has been effective?
Well, I guess there are a number of ways. There's even been some research about the return on investment in coaching. I guess the simplest way is to do a pre and post evaluation of the behaviours you're looking to impact on. 360-degree feedback over a 6 or 12 month period can often be most effective. It's certainly a method I use to assess the coachee's behavioural traits or behavioural patterns prior to a coaching intervention, and then evaluating post the 6 or 12 months intervention to see what movement we've got. So that's one way. I guess there are other ways as well which are more subjective, such as the manager's feedback, stakeholders' feedback. But essentially we're trying to see if the coaching has been able to embed sustainable behavioural change in the coachee.
And from the perspective of the person being coached, what sort of things should they expect when they meet up with a coach for the first time?
Well, I guess most of us, when we enter into a professional relationship, want to feel trust and confidence in the person giving us the advice. But I think far too much is made of the relationship aspect of coaching, and that sometimes we can fall into allowing coaching to become about relationships, whether it's the relationship with the coachee, whether it's about the coachee's relationships with their peers or their boss. And obviously work-based relationships are important. The old wives' tale or the old adage about most people leave their boss, not their job, it has some truth in it. But nonetheless, coaching ultimately has to be about developing capabilities. My own view is that there's often a clue about the problems a person is having in the relationships and their own capability around dealing with people conflict or influencing or other such things. And often it's important to remind the coachee that they're going to be working with a lot of people over their careers, and this won't be the only time they'll run into this particular problem. And learning to deal with the problem, learning to understand themselves and their own predispositions is crucial. I find coaching works most effectively when we raise our eyes and see the problem from the broader perspective, not from the specific relationship issue the person is dealing with. If they understand that this is not the only person they're going to be dealing with in their career that will create these challenges, then it becomes a learning exercise rather than a problem-solving or emotional download exercise.
And Peter, as a coach yourself, what are some of the key challenges that you face?
The key challenges as a coach, I think initially, is in convincing the coachee. Most of my coaching assignments are in the executive coaching space, and our organisation has designed a specific executive capability intervention. What we've been able to identify is that depending on the industry, there are some core capabilities that distinguish executive requirements than senior management requirements. Most commonly, the bar is raised on the amount of influencing, stakeholder management, performance management, integration of requirements between cross-functional units of the business. Once I can convince the coachee at that level that what they're really doing is developing a set of long-term behaviours that are about the way they address executive requirements, not just about what they're dealing with in the here and now, then I find coaching works more effectively. Like all people, executives have massive pressures and frustrations, and they want to get those off their chest. Whilst that's important, it's not enough to make a sustainable change.
And from your own personal experience of coaching, could you give me an example perhaps of a particularly effective coaching intervention you've been involved in?
Yes, well, there's been a number, I'm pleased to say, and therefore my own anecdotal evidence really supports the effectiveness of it. I guess a recent example was a young executive who is incredibly intelligent and very able, and I guess had low frustration tolerance for people who weren't as driven or as quick to pick up complex concepts as he was. I guess you'd call him the sort of guy that doesn't, suffer fools gladly. Of course, he was given a ridiculously complex and difficult project to deliver on, and he made sure he made it. And along the way, he burned everyone in his path. He challenged people to excess. He drove people and himself to the point of exhaustion. And whilst he delivered on the project, he left behind a wake. When he was referred to me, I guess the situation was that he was fairly broken because he'd been removed from the role, and for the first time in his career, he faced failure. He faced the fact that his style didn't work. What we were able to do with the chap was to show him how sustainable performance is achieved, what's required. First of all, he was able to acquire the knowledge of the purpose of influencing, what influencing is, what it looks like, what the components of it are, how to motivate people, how people are motivated differently. Once he acquired the knowledge and understood how it fitted into a successful set of executive behaviours, then what we did was able to embed those. That's when the knowledge became a capability. He practiced them, he came back with examples, we worked through them, and over a 6 or 8 month period, he was able to completely change people's perception of his style. The outcome was he went from essentially being in the exit lounge of the organisation to being promoted to one of the most significant roles imaginable. He was in charge of a major fleet of assets. I won't name them specifically, but essentially he was running a $2 billion business. And he puts it down to understanding what sustainable success is rather than understanding what in the moment success is.
Increasingly, organisations are trying to develop coaching competencies in their managers. How effective do you think this strategy is likely to be?
Coaching competencies within themselves, I think, won't work per se, because most of the coaching research we have are about what dialogue and what questions and what interaction you undertake with your staff to be an effective coach. But I think you have to bundle this process up with some hard evidence, so we know what we're talking about. We're not presuming. What is the person's capability? What is their potential to acquire a set of capabilities? I think that coaching skills for managers will be most effective when we're able to integrate them with clear evidence, clear feedback that's evidence-based, and then overlay coaching skills or coaching dialogue to that. So I think on its own, changing a manager's dialogue without context, without a purpose or a reason, won't be as successful as having a clear goal in coaching. A lot of people believe coaching, or one of the core components of coaching, is goal setting. So we must incorporate a purpose for the dialogue, not just to have a chat.
And just a final question, Peter. there seem to be an increasing number of people out there promoting themselves as coaches.
Yes.
What value do you see of having a coach whose training is in psychology?
Well, obviously incredibly valuable, because ultimately coaching is about behavioural change, and all of psychology is focused on the examination of behaviour. One of the misnomers about psychology, and one of the core brand identifications people have with psychology, is that it's about mental health, mental issues. Pardon the pun. Obviously, that's a core component of what we do, but behaviour is broader than just people who are suffering mental health issues or even minor mental health disturbances. It is about behaviour that leads to sustainable high performance in a broad range of contexts. And I think that psychology has been as proactive and as effective in developing evidence around what motivates people, what keeps people performing at a high level, and what needs to be done to change a behavioural pattern. Now, this is not only applicable to people who may be suffering some personal issues, but also to people who want to be successful. So there's an entire body of knowledge within psychology that is about proactively affecting behavioural change, and this is most applicable to organisations where we are looking to improve sustainable performance in people.
Well, that's all we've got for today, Peter. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.